On Friday, Tucker Carlson started his first interview with Senator Tim Scott, RSC, to kick off the Family Leadership Summit. The summit, which can be viewed here, will be hosting multiple GOP presidential candidates including Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican Florida, former Governor Nikki Haley, RSC, Senator Tim Scott, RSC, former Vice President Mike Pence, RIN, Vivek Ramaswamy, and other candidates. Tucker Carlson will be interviewing each of them. The interview began focused on President Biden's recent deployment of additional active duty troops to Poland and the Baltic states, with Carlson asking Scott's thoughts on the issue. Scott argued that Biden has not defined America's national interest and that he does not want American troops fighting Russia. Scott then explained that diminishing Russia's military is in America's national interest, meaning that using Ukrainian troops to diminish the Russian military is in the interest of America's foreign policy. Carlson then went on to explain that the Chinese-Russian alliance has been reinforced thanks to the war in Ukraine and that Biden's policies, such as using sanctions, have created a bigger threat to America. Scott argued that President Biden has made considerable errors in his handling of Russian aggression, such as his statement saying that Russia could take some Ukrainian territory. Carlson then asked Scott why peace shouldn't be forced upon Ukraine in order to stop the war. Scott said that he doesn't want premature peace until America's goals are reached. Scott defined that goal as having Ukraine keep as much territory as possible and define those territorial lines for the next 100 years. The two then turned to cluster bombs, with Scott repeatedly dodging the question but explaining that under his administration, he would bolster the military-industrial complex to ensure America has enough ammunition for its armed forces. The conversation then turned to homelessness and mental health issues. Scott explained that there is a mental health crisis taking place in America and that over 100,000 Americans have lost their lives to overdoses in the last year, 70,000 of those being fentanyl. The South Carolina senator explained that in order to do that, a GOP president must finish the wall and secure the southern border. The senator then emphasized that a large percentage of gun deaths are through suicide and that the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated that issue amongst young people. Carlson and Scott then both agreed that U.S. troops should be deployed to the southern border, with Scott explaining that the money used to hire the 87,000 IRS agents that were employed via the Inflation Reduction Act should instead be diverted to secure the border. "If you don't control your own back door, it's not your country," Scott said, adding that he would use every resource the country has to end the Mexican cartels. The conversation then turned to the millions of illegal migrants currently residing in the country. Carlson pressed Scott on whether he would deport the individuals who entered the country illegally. Scott dodged the question and turned to ending sanctuary cities and identifying where illegal migrants are. Scott said that under his administration, he would reinstate the asylum policy that requires migrants to seek asylum in their first country, as well as reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. Carlson, however, asked why Mexico is less of a threat to Russia given that hundreds of thousands of Americans have been killed by drugs from America's southern neighbor. The conversation then turned to what Scott disagreed with his donors about. He answered that he believes that the government should claw back money from big banks when they fail. Scott then went on to give a number of issues that he believes should be a priority for the 2024 campaign.